welcome everyone to BAVO, to the seminar within the series Citizens and Subjects, Practices and Debates, where we want to somehow expand on experiences and our desires and conceptual grounds to look at artistic practices that believe are part of this world. You know, the project for the Venice Biennale Citizen and Subjects consists of 3 parts. One is a project or exhibition at the Dutch Pavilion in Venice by Arnold Mick, called Citizens and Subjects Arnold Mick. The second part is this critical reader titled Citizens and Subjects, the Netherlands, for example. And the third part is the extension of the pavilion from Venice back to the Netherlands. This series of lectures and seminars and conversations in which we want to put to test some of our assumptions and beliefs. Now, what I'm desperately in the dark trying to find, I have it, is a text that BAVO wrote for the reader, discussing in a very interesting, challenging way the current situation on the art scene in the Netherlands, mainly when it comes to the issues of political and engagements to the social political issues in the country. I have to say the text is rather entertaining. When we were working on it and editing it for the reader, I had lots of fun, I have to say. I don't know whether that's correct, because we should all look like very serious intellectuals, but basically the thesis is that a lot of artistic practices in the Netherlands do appear socially engaged, but as a matter of fact, it's a type of practices of going to, you know, problematic neighborhoods, working with the area inhabitants, and as a matter of fact, perpetuating the story that is of society and politics that is artistic practices originally, such as they are combating or questioning. BAVO complains in the text that there is no radical gesture that they would register on the scene in the Netherlands. And I'd like to quote a part from the paragraph that inspired us to set up this session. Where, for instance, is the documentary activist who, in Michael Moore style, took on the monster alliance between government, housing corporations, project developers, neighborhood organizations, and culture experts? As we argue, there is plenty of material for such an intervention in the Netherlands. How long do we have to wait for a wild gesture of the same caliber as the one Thomas Hirschhorn made to raise awareness of the alarming right-wing infiltration of mainstream politics in his home country, Switzerland? By occupying Switzerland's culture center in Paris, pimping it up with slogans and organizing video screenings and debates, Hirschhorn used all his symbolic leverage to politicize the current worrying developments. If one of Zizek's definitions of a true act is that of a crazy gesture performed by the subject regardless of the consequences within the symbolic order, then Hirschhorn's installation Swiss Democracy in 2004 definitely qualifies. His direct blow against the Swiss political class ultimately resulted in cutbacks to the subsidies of the Art Foundation for Helvetia, which sponsored the event. This is slightly taken out of the context. If you find time, it's really a fantastic essay to read, to get insight in this type of practices, art practices in the Netherlands. Now, I'd like to invite Bina Choi, who together with me co-developed this series of lectures and seminars, to introduce this session today and to introduce our speakers, and then would offer the floor to our very prominent guests.
I think you all wait so much for hearing from this first speaker, so I will make it short. And maybe in just summary, like we create this 2-day session, like inspired by BAVO's text, to examine again or confront again with the current state of democracy in which we live in and work in, and the critical dimension of contemporary art practice. Like just to touch upon the surface of democracy that which plays at this moment, or like as we understand, there are like we see like two basic principles. One, just citizens' participation, take part in decision making for the common interest, but that entails inevitably the pluralism, the different voices, and so that's another principle that democracy deal with, how to cope with different voices. But like what bothered us when we conceived this project is that actually this idea of democracy like overshadowed by yeah, it's a big word, but the capitalist idea. It grew hand in hand with capitalist idea, and more specifically the neoliberal agenda, which give privilege and or core of decision making or ground for decision to big corporate and a few investors. So here, like we like to ask a question about what kind of democracy we really want to deal with, and what kind of subject we are, and as is suggested in the title of this whole Venice Dutch Pavilion project. So, as a citizen, as a citizen, and what kind of subject or what kind of subjectivity we can perform, especially in this place of art. So we have 3 or 4 guests, and first I will introduce just by order of presentation. And first, BAVO, 2 culture critic and theorist. Can I say that way? But you study philosophy and architecture. Gideon Boy and Matthias Power, they started as a BAVO in 2001, and they're based in Rotterdam. And they, as Maria introduced, they contributed to the critical reader, the second part of the Dutch Pavilion project. And yeah, their book about cultural activism today is coming soon, next week. So if you want to follow the discussion further, then you may have chance by reading this book. And then second speaker, Thomas Hirschhorn, you may quite familiar with. In 1999, in the project called Midnight Walker and City Sleepers that actually Maria co-curated, and he presented the Spinoza monument. Is it right there was like first, like initial step of the making monument? Or
yes, was the first.
Yeah. And then, like lately in 2006 in Maastricht at Bonnefontaine Museum, there was like large scale, somehow like new definition of retrospective for like solo exhibition called Aanspoor. And then also in Amsterdam at public space with a roof, Thomas contributed to the project called Beauty Unrealized. I see the 2 curators who create that project. Yes, and then now Markus Steinweg, the philosopher, also philosopher collaborate a lot with the artists, and most prominently with Thomas. But they emphasize their working together is not collaboration, and we're gonna ask that what it is. And I think Mark is going to give more like philosophical understanding of the notion of the subject or the concept of such subject. Okay, I'll give the floor to